If God exists, what about evil? I mean, we know evil is real because we learned that truth is correspondence with objective reality, and evil is evident in reality. Evil is real. But as we already learned, there must be an objective moral standard. In addition, the moral lawgiver must be absolutely good. Think about this. Evil in the world presupposes a perfect standard of goodness. For if anyone insists there is real imperfection in the world, then there must be a perfect standard by which this can be known. Therefore, if God exists, God must be absolutely good. However, if God is absolutely good and created everything and everyone, where did evil come from? How could an absolutely good God create evil? So the argument can be summarized as follows. God is absolutely perfect. God created only perfect creatures because God is incapable of making mistakes. One of the perfections God gave some of his creatures was the power of free will. Some of these creatures freely chose to do evil. Therefore, a perfect creature caused evil. Think about this. Okay, in God's absolutely perfect love, God gave humans free will. See my other article on that. Do humans possess free will? With the great gift of free will, some humans chose evil. But what caused the first creature to choose evil? Well, there are three basic views of the nature of choice: determinism, indeterminism, and self-determinism. In determinism, a free act is caused by another. In indeterminism, it is uncaused. And in self-determinism, it is caused by oneself. Determinism would eliminate human responsibility since another caused the actions, not ourselves. Indeterminism is irrational since a fundamental rule of reason is that every action has a cause. It follows then, every free choice must be self-caused. Hence, God is responsible for making evil possible, but free creatures are responsible for making evil actual. Understand this. Evil is not a thing or substance. Rather, it is a lack or a privation of a good thing that God made. Privation is the loss or absence of a quality or attribute that is normally present. Now, with that in mind, evil can be explained. There is no such thing as something that is totally evil. If it were totally deprived of all good, it would be nothing. Rust is the privation of metal. Rot is the privation of wood. Evil is like moth holes in a garment. A totally moth-eaten garment would just be a hanger in a closet. The garment wouldn't exist. Cold is the privation of heat. Darkness is the privation of light. Evil is the privation of God, the objective moral standard. When a human rejects or refuses the objective moral standard, God, evil will exist as the corruption of what is good. Now, a classic argument against God is the persistence of evil. Many argue that if God is all-powerful, he could destroy evil. If God is absolutely good, he would destroy evil. However, evil is not destroyed and still exists and persists, therefore there is no such God. But is that true? Is it possible to destroy evil? The argument is as follows. God cannot do what is actually impossible. It is actually impossible to destroy evil without also destroying free choice. But free choice is necessary to a moral universe. Therefore, God cannot destroy evil without also destroying this good moral universe. It is impossible for God to do what is contradictory because God will not contradict himself. God cannot make an affirmation to be true and false at the same time. God cannot stand for truth while opposing and objecting truth. God cannot make a square circle or a stone so heavy he cannot lift it. It is not possible to force people to freely choose the good. Forced freedom is oxymoronic. It is not freedom at all. Therefore, God cannot literally destroy all evil without annihilating free choice. Unless hate is possible, love is not possible. Unless evil is possible, good cannot be freely chosen. What then is the purpose of evil? If God does not create evil, but does permit evil to happen, why? Why does God permit evil to happen? Is there any other reason that God permits evil to exist other than the gift of free will? Many people argue that an all-good God must have a good purpose for everything. Some people argue that there is no good purpose for some suffering, therefore there cannot be an all-good God. But is that true? The ability to have pain has a good purpose. Pain helps us to know we are alive, and it also helps guide us in the right direction. If one were to put his or her hand in fire, the pain would help that person to realize his or her limitations and to stay within boundaries that are beneficial to health and prosperity. Likewise, much pain we experience in life are warnings, and they provide us with the opportunities to correct ourselves. With free will comes opportunities to learn from mistakes. Evil is sometimes a byproduct of a good purpose. Plants and animals die so that humans may have food to live. God had a good purpose for creating water, right? To sustain life. However, this makes it possible for someone to drown. It is good to have sexual intercourse within the confines of marriage. Please see my other articles. First, Sex Matters, and then the other one, Defending Marriage. Anyway, it is good to have sexual intercourse within the confines of marriage for procreation and enjoyment. However, this makes it possible for someone to get raped. It also makes it possible for a woman to abort her baby. Please see my other article, A Logical Argument Against Abortion. I think it's just called Abortion. Now, it is evident that much good has been produced from evil acts that have been experienced. Although the life of trees are taken, a house can be built. Sawdust is an unintended byproduct of making lumber, but it can be salvaged to make paper. The paper we have Bibles on that give us truth. Now consider the example of MADD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MADD, MADD. MADD was founded on September 5th, 1980 by Candace Lightner, after her 13-year-old daughter, Carrie, was killed by a drunk driver. But now, consider this. Now there is at least one MADD office in every state of the United States, and at least one in each province of Canada. These offices offer victim services and many resources involving alcohol safety. MADD has shown that drunk driving has been reduced by half since its founding. The death of a 13-year-old girl was due to another human's free will. Some human chose to get drunk and then operate a vehicle, thus killing Carrie. However, since the death of a 13-year-old girl in 1980, MAD has saved an estimated 300,000 lives and counting. Consider another example. America's Most Wanted. In 1981, John Walsh's 6-year-old son, Adam, was abducted from a mall. 2 weeks after Adam's disappearance, his severed head was discovered in a canal about 120 miles away from the mall. The devastation led John Walsh to dedicate himself to catching fugitives and seeking justice for crime victims. The FBI credits America's Most Wanted for leading to the capture of 17 of the fugitives who have appeared on the agency's 10 Most Wanted list. Walsh says an estimated 1,200 suspects have been caught as a result of the show. And these statistics are even old and outdated because it's now 2019. But John Walsh is also a co-founder of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Before Adam Walsh's kidnapping and death, there was no national database on missing children. Law enforcement officers could enter information on stolen cars, stolen guns, stolen jewelry, but there was no central place to keep information on missing children. So John Walsh and his wife pushed Congress to pass the Missing Children Act, which led to the creation of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. According to its website, the center has helped law enforcement find almost 200,000 missing children since it was founded in 1984. The death of a 6-year-old boy was due to another human's free will. Some human chose to disregard the absolute moral standard and abduct and murder Adam. However, since the death of a 6-year-old boy in 1981, thousands of suspects have been captured and thousands of missing children have been found. What about pain and suffering? Why does God permit evil if people suffer? Well, you're going to have to see my other article to explain that as a whole. See, why does God allow pain and suffering? See my other article. I go into depth about that. Look, but first and foremost, much of the suffering in the world is due to free will. Some suffering is brought on directly by free choice. Some suffering is brought on indirectly by free choice. The choice to be lazy can result in poverty. Some people suffer directly from free choice, as in the case of spouse or child abuse. Some people suffer indirectly from free choice. Alcoholism can lead to poverty of one's children. Also, some suffering may be a necessary condition of a greater moral good. Just as diamonds are formed under pressure, our character is also formed under pressure and suffering. Now, free will might explain the vast majority of evil. But what about natural disasters, right? I'm not going to avoid this. Moral evil is explained by free choice, but some natural evil does not result from free choice. Natural evil cannot be explained by free choice of creatures. Hence, it is argued that God must be responsible for natural evil, but natural evils cause innocent suffering and death. Hence, it is argued that God is responsible for innocent suffering and death. Therefore, He can be all good, yet not all powerful, or God can be all powerful, yet not all good. But, is this true? We cannot assume that earthly deaths of natural disasters are evil. Death may seem evil to us mortals in a self-seeking state, in a temporal mindset, but that doesn't mean that earthly death itself is evil. See my other article, Life or Death. Because death is merely the beginning of the true life. Now, if those who died might be with God, it is possible that they received a shortcut into a blessing. We must also consider displacement from natural disasters. Really, think about this. If people get shifted around and go to different locations, some people might meet their future spouse in the process. I personally met a couple where that was the case. Because of Hurricane Katrina back in 2005, the man fled to a different location. And it was in that new location he met the woman who later became his wife. And who knows, from that person's lineage may be the next scientist, inventor, or leader. You don't know. Natural disasters also give communities a chance to improve infrastructure and reprioritize community needs. Researchers from Duke University School of Environment and earth scientists assert that hurricanes and tropical storms help spread about environmental necessities. Furthermore, without hurricanes, barrier islands on coastlines and their ecosystems, they would not survive. Think about this. Fires can eliminate unwanted invasive plants from certain ecosystems, but they can also help spread them, enrich soils with fresh nutrients, and encourage greater plant diversity. Some plants are even dependent upon fire for their seeds to sprout in long term. Also, animals are sometimes attracted to new growth of areas recovering from fire. Now, the only logical conclusion I can find is that God produces a lot of good out of what humans consider to be evil acts of nature. Just as MAD and America's Most Wanted produced a lot of good from initial evil, God also is able to produce a lot of good from natural disasters. In addition, we have no earthly way of knowing just how far the effects of natural disasters can extend. We simply do not know enough about them. We don't have enough information about natural disasters to assume their purposes. But in conclusion, the vast majority of all evil exists due to free will and the privation of what is good. Free will was a loving gift to humanity. The majority of all evil exists because humans refuse to abide by the objective moral standard. Only some of the evil we experience is due to natural disasters. However, many people have come to God through suffering. Although we know that evil exists, we also know that much good has come from much evil. Simply because finite minds cannot conceive of a good purpose for some evil does not mean that there is none. Also, the existence of evil does not it doesn't mean that God condones evil. It just means that God merely permits it to happen. In fact, C.S. Lewis noted that pain is God's megaphone to warn a morally deaf world. And if we, as finite beings, know a good purpose for much evil, then surely an infinite mind can know a good purpose for the rest. After all, it is written, God's thoughts and ways are much higher and deeper than our own. See Isaiah 55 verses 8 to 9. So long as humans possess free will, it will always be possible that someone will refuse to do what is good and right. I believe what we view to be worst-case scenarios in our limited perception of this physical life will actually turn out to be an awesome story that will help us connect the dots and remain humble and grateful in the spiritual life with God. After all, you must keep in mind, after all is said and done, God is going to restore people, wipe away every tear, and ensure that His children will live in eternal joy and peace. It's written, Isaiah 25 verse 8, Revelation 7:17, and Revelation, the entire chapters, chapter 21 and chapter 22 of Revelation. We know the end of the story. Now, what follows is my personal belief and should not be misconstrued as truth. However, using logic and reasoning, I have reason to believe it is truth, or very close to being the truth. I have concluded that if evil is not permitted, it cannot be defeated. The only way to overcome evil is to allow it to be permitted. I believe that God permitted evil in order to overcome it. I believe this physical life on earth is merely boot camp training ground. Just as filters are used to purify our drinking water, I believe God uses this life to filter bad from good. Just as dross is removed from gold, I believe God uses this life to filter bad from good. Just as wheat is threshed and winnowed to remove chaff, I believe God uses this life to separate bad from good. I believe this life is mere accumulation of evidence through our free will that will serve to either testify for us on our behalf or to proclaim our guilt. Either proclaim our goodness or the choices that we make will condemn us. Evidence is brought into a courtroom in order to declare an innocent or guilty verdict upon someone. I believe our entire lifespan will amount to the evidence that will speak for itself. Everything we do or do not do is creating our own case. An entire lifespan of evidence will not be discredited or denied or declared inadmissible. When it comes time for Judgment Day, we will have no excuses that will be able to counter the amount of evidence that is either for or against us. And now that we know objective truth, objective moral standard, and creator of the universe and life, you should continue to investigate the quest for truth. That's evil. But what about pain and suffering, right? Please see my other article, Pain and Suffering.